Good Friday morning. It is now 8:30. Welcome to the WLBB Community Voice here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Also streaming live online at newstalk1330.com for our listeners up in Virginia this morning. And I'm your host, Colin Worthington. We're also on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page. So anytime during our program, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post those up there, and I will try to take a peek, see, and share them with our guest this morning, who I'll introduce right now. Her name is Tammy Nguyen. She's Dr. Tammy Nguyen. She's a child and adolescent psychiatrist with the Willowbrooke Psychiatric Center. Dr. Nguyen earned her medical degree in psychiatry from Howard University College of Medicine in Washington, D.C., completed her internship and residency at the University of Florida in Gainesville, and a fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta. Now, at Willowbrooke, she works with children and adolescents age 5 to 18, treating emotional and behavioral issues, including mood disorders, depression, anxiety disorders, trauma, PTSD, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia, with psychiatric evaluations, psychotherapeutic intervention, and medication management. A lot of things we can talk about this morning, I think. Dr. Nguyen, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And you're kind of new to the community as well, one of the reasons that we've brought you onto the program this morning. So welcome to Carroll County.
Thank you. Thank you.
And how long have you been here in Carroll County?
A couple months. I started working at Willowbrooke. Well, that's 20 minutes away, but
The City of Gold.
Yes. About 3 months now. But I've only been in Georgia for about 2.5 years. So, yeah, so still relatively new.
You at least knew we were out here then. If you've been in Georgia for 2 years, you knew we were out here a little bit. Mm-hmm. So what you think? What's your perspective of West Georgia?
I like it so far. It's very different from Atlanta. That's where I was coming in for fellowship. And it's very busy. Traffic's crazy, but this is a nice, slow-paced life. I really enjoy it.
I'll say traffic's pretty crazy in Willowbrooke too.
Is it?
Yeah.
So far, thankfully, I haven't experienced that because I come in pretty early. But yeah, no.
That's
so
the
far,
key.
so good.
That's the key. Well, good. It's good to meet you, and thank you for coming on the program this morning. We're going to talk about a whole plethora of things this morning, but focusing on the kids. First of all, I think for a lot of people that kind of intertwine psychiatric or psychology and psychiatry. Would you differentiate those two, please, for us?
Yes. Okay. So with psychology, they're actually very similar. We work on mental health, and we both do therapy, talk therapy, for adults and children, right? But psychiatry focuses more on medication management, and that's what I do. So I do actually both therapy and medications, and psychology focuses more on cognitive behavioral therapy, supportive therapy. So they skip the medication side. Mm-hmm.
But one more kind of, I guess this will be a little more introduction to you. If you were able to conduct a study while you're working at Willowbrooke, with all the children you come here, what would you be able to focus on? I mean, is there a topic? Is there something that you're particularly fascinated in? Maybe cause and effect or anything like that. What would you write a thesis on after working there for a year?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Well, a couple things actually that comes to mind. So, this is more just general, not focused on kids here, but the effects of the pandemic, right, on our children, how virtual schooling and being at home has affected them, both learning and their mental health, right? And then in terms of stressors of being in the city versus out here, rural, right, in a rural county, like what sort of stressors they deal with, right? Because I'm sure it's different dealing with pollution, dealing with traffic, dealing with parental stress as well in the city versus out here, because parents, I'm sure, have different stressors.
Yeah, you think about the trickle-down effect with parents. I mean, if you're sitting in traffic for 2 hours, you maybe have a different emotional state when you come home.
Oh, absolutely.
Rather than cruising. So not just so much the pandemic situation, but just life in general, country versus rural. Yeah. Well, let's talk about, I guess, this would be the top of the pyramid as far as how it affect kids, parental stress and the pandemic. And you believe that being a parent is, and it's accurate, it's stressful enough even without the pandemic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And getting locked down with children, it didn't make things easier. Recent study published in Psychology magazine, which I'm assuming is an important and influential and believable publication. April 2021 found that more than 71% of parents report feeling more stressed now than they did before the COVID-19 pandemic. What kind of immediate effect does that have on kids?
Oh my goodness. There's so many, just because while kids model their behaviors and their moods right after parents, they function together as a unit because they come home, they see their parents, they really rely on them for support, and especially with so many changes in routines now, in their routines, like being at home and not seeing their friends and not seeing their teachers and having that extra support. They rely so much more on their parents, and that puts a lot of strain on parents, right? Because they have their own stressors to deal with, maybe unemployment, maybe remote work as well, having their routines change, so they're stressed. And then kids seeing how stressed their parents are makes them stressed. So everyone has stress, and it's sort of just it's sort of it makes it difficult for them to find support in one another.
My son graduated high school last year. He started college this semester, and I'd say over the last 2 years, I'm noticing more and more things that he picked up in my personality, and they're always things that I'm frustrated with him. When I see him do that, I'm like, man, why are you doing that? Then I realize, when I'm doing this, when I do that action, I don't see it the same way as when he's doing it. Because I care more about him, and I don't want it to affect him socially or anything. But yeah, I'm definitely seeing that a lot more. And there's no way out of it. I mean, you don't realize it's too late. You've been doing these things for 15 years, and your kids just picked it up.
Yeah,
And they're
absolutely. They're little mannerism, right? Like the little things that you say, little slangs here and there. They pick it up. Yeah.
And the way he dismisses things and people, and I didn't realize that was building up in him. But yes, unfortunately, there's another study in psychology from July of 2020 that found a correlation between parental stress and children's behavioral problems. What are some of the things, maybe some of the issues or reactions we should be watching out for in our kids before we are concerned it's a problem? It's like, right now I've already given up. It's like I can't, anything that I have a concern with that my son is copying off of me, I realize, well, it's kind of probably hard to get that out of him, out of his repertoire. But I mean, is there a certain age where you can see things and kind of nip it in the bud and try to help it?
Yes. So the short answer is yes. And what I'm seeing in clinic right now is parents coming in with complaints of, just anger, irritability in their kids, right? They come home from school, or if they're doing virtual schooling, they're not concentrating. They're very restless. They're hyperactive. They're impulsive. They talk back. They're very defiant. And they're like, well, this wasn't my kid before, or things have really gotten worse and picked up since the pandemic. So so there are a lot of behavioral changes, and I want to pinpoint on the irritability part, right? Because typically that's the first complaint. Like, they're just angry all the time, or they just withdraw all the time in their room, and they're not interacting with family. So that's some of the things I do hear a lot, and I would say, focus on that, and because your kids best, and you know what their baselines are, right? So if you feel a big change in their behaviors, their attitude, or their mood, it might be a sign that there's an underlying mood disorder or anxiety disorder, right? Or something maybe less serious, like an adjustment disorder, because there are a lot of things that are in flux right now, and they have to adjust to, that it's hard for them to communicate to you about, right? So especially with the younger kids, it's hard for them to express all the negative emotions that are going on within them, right? Is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it discomfort? And a lot of times when they don't verbally know the words to express what's going on, it comes out as anger, as acting out, as throwing things, aggression, right? So that's something to pick up on.
I imagine if the parents aren't expressive, I mean, it makes it harder for the kid to be expressive too.
Right.
And again,
absolutely.
That's my fault with you, Liam. I'm sorry. What's the cause for a lot of this? We think about the pandemic. I mean, are you one who believes that maybe spending more time with video games and with those little devices can cause that irritability, can result in that? I guess the need for immediate gratification, not being close to friends and things like that while in this pandemic. Eating, not eating as well, probably too.
Right. And kids depend so much on routines, right, to function well. So when their eating times are messed up, they're not eating when they should. And if they're so focused on video games, like you said, then they forget about just basic personal hygiene. Yes, that's going to affect...
Stinky kids. That's the worst of stinky kids.
Right. That's going to affect their mood and behaviors down the line. So does it add to aggression or irritability? I think it's just a combination of a lot of things, right? I wouldn't blame it completely on video games. A lot of times kids do rely on it heavily as an outlet to escape whatever that's going on around them. And I do see that a lot. So especially this one young girl I see just focuses on playing Minecraft all day, right? They ignore family. I mean, she doesn't want to eat. She just stays in her room and plays Minecraft. And it comes down to, she feels like everything is just so out of control. And she has no say in a lot of things, right? No say in people getting sick, no say in her schedule, her
She
virtual
feels
learning.
that way, not her family. She feels like she is. Okay.
Oh, yeah, yes. Just so out of control that she relies on video games because she controls all these characters, right? She creates all these buildings, and it makes her feel safe because it's reliable, and she's able to manipulate things. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it is an interesting perspective. Before we do take our break, think about the children withdrawing. But isn't that kind of don't we typically expect that at maybe 15, 16, 17? Do we accept that's just going to be, part of growing up, and that's going to happen to pretty much every kid, and the one that doesn't withdraw like that is the rare one?
That is a good point, right? There is a normal spectrum on that. So when you do reach adolescent, that age group, you do want to have your own space and have independence, and people do rebel, and it's part of the normal process of finding yourself, right? Of finding your own identity, your own person, and not let your parents tell you what to do. So part of it is normal growth, but if it becomes too dysfunctional, right, where you're skipping school, where you're throwing things, where you're hurting other people and yourself, then no, I would say that's abnormal.
Time right now is 8:43. We're going to take our first break and continue our conversation with Dr. Tammy Nguyen. She's a child and adolescent psychiatrist with the Willowbrooke Psychiatric Center in Willowbrooke. Questions and comments? Again, if you've posted some questions or comments up on the Facebook page, I'll take a look at those and get those out directly. But otherwise, we'll come back from our first break and talk about some tips on helping parents manage the stress that might be created in their family, because you don't want it to trickle down to your children. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System and Oak Mountain Academy here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3.
Health is a journey. It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
As a graduate of Oak Mountain Academy, I've found that my experience on the mountain prepared me beyond all expectations. As a junior at Auburn University, I approached my studies with great confidence thanks to what I learned at OMA. When I think back on my time on the mountain, I think of my teachers. Their genuine love and concern for me as a student was always evident, and now, as an adult, I still foster those relationships. I'm Carly Robinson, an Oak Mountain Academy alum. Visit oakmountain.us to see how you can offer your child an amazing opportunity to be a warrior.
Hey, 8:44. Welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3, streaming live online at newstalk1330.com. And this morning we're on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page, where you can see my guest, Dr. Tammy Nguyen. She's a child and adolescent psychiatrist with the Willowbrooke Psychiatric Center. And again, we are on the News Talk 1330 Facebook page, but apparently all you parents back at home, you're doing everything right. You have no issues, no questions. That's you've shared with us this morning. So what if you do? You still got about 10 more minutes if you want to throw some questions out there. You can throw some personal questions in there that might be helpful, and we'll be sure and ask our guest this morning. Let's talk about how parents can manage their own stress, which again would be beneficial to your kids. Give us some ideas here.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, take care of yourself, right? Find a support. And during this time, it's been a year and a half with this pandemic, and we've lost a lot of our outside support with our friends, our mentors, our coworkers. It's just where we're not physically close to.
So that's the key. We're not, not getting those physical pats on the back or the hugs and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And as humans, we're social creatures. So not having that has been a big loss. So I would say get support where you can, either from, staying connected online, through texting, calling, in your church community, wherever you can get it. I would say try to reach out and surround yourself with good people, because I'm sure you're not the only one that's going through all this stress, right? Mm-hmm. People are going through the same thing. We're living through the same experience. So I would say reach out. That would be the first thing. And then speaking of, social media and getting connected, I would say there's a good balance with it too. Especially right now, things can be very toxic. People with very strong opinions can really get to you if you follow it all the time, or certain channels, certain news stories, or like certain media platforms. Just hyper focusing on these things can really be detrimental to your mental health overall, right? So it's a good balance to stay connected, but also to limit your exposure to things that will trigger you, will stress you. So it's like find that balance for yourself. And then managing your time because we only have 24 hours a day. There's only so much time that we could do everything. And with, I'm sure with parents right now trying to manage their own work and manage their kids and, getting everyone fed and dressed and up and going for school. And then for the ones that are doing remote learning, getting, their platforms up for them to do school. It's very stressful and it's a whole lot. And it's a lot to do. So, try to stay organized, try to make a routine for yourself too, and make a schedule and get things going so that, you don't feel so overwhelmed. So I would say try to manage your time better, either by waking up earlier so that you could get more things done, or just, have a calendar, have a schedule so you could stay more organized.
Mm-hmm. As far as managing time, I think I've always done that real well, and maybe that's why I'm good in radio, because our timing is always, it's precise. Things are happening exactly at the top of the hour, station ID at 50 seconds before the hour, and I guess my frustration, and I think I'm better at it now better in my older age, but I think as a youth, I'd be frustrated when everybody else couldn't be on that time. Like if something's got to be done at 4 o'clock, it's got to be done at 4 o'clock, and we're telling when you're going to travel, you want to leave at 4 o'clock, button seats at 4 o'clock or whatever, if nobody else can keep up with that's where I'm sure I showed frustration at that point. And that guarantee that my son will be that same way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
well, there's something else that you could also do, right? You feel like you're so strict on your time and things have to run a certain way. Be mindful about the things that you enjoy too, and schedule that. Mm-hmm. So it's not all about work and scheduling and getting things done. I think it's also important to remind yourself of self-care. I know it's been talked about a lot recently, and it's so important. If you're going to schedule your work day from 9 to 5, make sure that you have an hour in there to maybe take a long bath, go for a nice walk, sitting down with your family to talk about their day. So things that will make you feel more refreshed, will recharge you, right? So that's also equally important, I think.
How easy is it to talk with your kids initially? If you do have a concern, you're not just going to automatically set an appointment and say we're going to the doctor to check you out. You want to have that conversation first, right? How mm-hmm. easy is it to approach your kid and have that conversation? And how much should you push if your kid's not listening initially and not receptive to it?
To maybe getting their own treatment, is that what you mean?
If that's the next step, because I think initially you do want to talk with them, right? You talk to them and see, because you don't necessarily want to go to the doctor and take that you maybe find out exactly what's going on in their head.
Right. That's so tough for a lot of parents because especially with the kids who do withdraw and isolate when they do feel stressed. I would say going back to the whole modeling talk, right? You could always start with yourself and just say, hey, Dad's been feeling really sad and stressed and nervous about whatever's been going on, and here's how I feel about it. And I think setting the stage right helps. So maybe talking about yourself and talking about your own struggles will give them an outlet, a door to talk about themselves too, right? They feel a little bit more comfortable with things that they might not be so open with, because they know that you have the same struggles too.
Yeah, if they can relate to it a little bit. All right, time right now is 8:50. We're going to take our final break here and come back and finish our conversation with Dr. Tammy Nguyen, child and adolescent psychiatrist with the Willowbrooke Psychiatric Center. She's a new girl in town, been here a couple of months, so get a chance to introduce you to her, so maybe feel more comfortable heading up to Willowbrooke with your child if you need to. And we'll talk about how you would do that in our final segment. Again, questions and comments, feel free to post those on the News Talk 1330 Facebook page, and I'll look at those during this break, and we'll come back with about 8 minutes. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System and Oak Mountain Academy on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3.
Health is a journey. It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
At Oak Mountain Academy, our daily schedule includes convocation, prayer, and the Pledge of Allegiance. By doing so, we build a family-like community where all students grow and flourish and personal faith is encouraged. Through community service and a historical approach to biblical study, our students are taught the value of the warrior way, honesty, respect, and responsibility. Oak Mountain Academy. We are a family creating legacies. To learn more, visit oakmountain.us.
8:53. Welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3, streaming live online at newstalk1330.com. And this morning we are on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page. If you did miss any of our program this morning, we're going to post the podcast on our website at newstalk1330.com. I'll do that a little bit after 9 o'clock, so you can go back and listen to it. And, of course, you can go back and watch it on the News Talk 1330 Facebook page. Do have a question this morning for you. John Armstrong listening in. Recent reports about Instagram being toxic for teenagers. John's saying teen girls, so maybe he's got a daughter, but we'll say teenagers. Should we try to prevent the teenagers in our families from using Instagram, or would educating them on it be a better course of action? Mm-hmm. It's easier just to say, nope, can't use it, but...
Right. That's a tough one, just because it's such a popular platform, right? Mm-hmm. And kids do connect with their friends and, connect with their friends and show off their daily events on these platforms. So we don't want to totally disconnect them socially from their circle. But I would say, if I'm not sure if his daughters or sons are having issues with other mental health issues, right? Like if they're already struggling with depression, anxiety, body image issues, or low self-esteem, then with that coming into using these platforms, it can be toxic, and it can make these symptoms worse. So I would say if they are already struggling with issues, try to monitor it a little bit closer and try to set limits on what they can go on and what times they can use it. Might be better, but I think the more important thing is getting them to talk about it, right? Because they can't really avoid these images or whatever that's toxic on Instagram altogether. So if you do close down the platform, they could still see it on YouTube, on TV, on Facebook. So it's hard to just disconnect them from everything. But the better thing I would say to do is to encourage them to talk about it, right? So if you see that they're upset after seeing something, If you see that they're tearful, if you see that they're withdrawing, encourage them to talk about it. It's like, hey, what's bothering you? Or, hey, what did you see? Or what were you hearing? Or I think that might be more beneficial, is to get them to just connect with you and communicate with you what's bothering them.
Is it fair to, I guess you worry about your mental health on Instagram. Is it fair to connect that with maybe previous generations? Like, my friend's doing it, I want to keep up with my friend. I mean, is it fair to compare it to maybe drinking, 20 years ago, or smoking 40 years ago or something? Because my friend's doing it and keeping up with it. I mean, can we relate that? I mean, as parents, is it fair for us to relate that, to kind of calm ourselves down and relate that to being on Instagram and social media?
I see what you mean. It's just because it's a way to connect with others, right? It's a way to socialize, and a way to feel like you're part of a group, you're part of something, and that's so important when, especially in the adolescent group, because you want to feel like you belong. You want to feel like you are a part of something.
Yeah. We got about 4 minutes left in the program, so let me I guess leave with this. If you determine that you'd like to see your child get checked out, or just talk to somebody. Maybe they won't talk to you as a parent, but you think they might talk to somebody else, a psychiatrist, a little bit better, be a little more open. What's the process for making that happen, and what could they expect? What could the parent expect if they bring their child by to talk to somebody?
Yes, so you could actually go on to willowbrooke.psychiatriccenter.org, or you can give us a call at 770-812-3530, and just ask for an appointment. It's as easy as that. Just say, hey, I want to take my kid in for an initial evaluation, and then we'll set them up with a date, hopefully within a month, and then it's either going to be, I'll be there. There's also a couple other psychiatrists in the building that could also see them, and with the initial evaluation, it's basically a conversation, kind of like this, right? I know a lot of kids come in feeling very afraid because they don't know what to expect, but it's really just to check in to see what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and we don't always prescribe medications on the first visit or anything like that. That's not the goal. It's really to see what your goals are, right, and what you would like to see improve, and that could be either referring them to therapy, either getting them started on a medication, or coming up with another plan. But that's typically how the first appointment is.
All right, wrapping up our program here with Dr. Nguyen, child and adolescent psychiatrist with the Willowbrooke Psychiatric Center up in Willowbrooke. Well, it's good to meet you. I appreciate you being on the program this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As we do wrap up, is there anything you want to say? Any kind of point you want to make? You want to say hi to Mom?
Hi, Mom. Back in Virginia. No, but just to take care of yourself and take care of, your family, and make sure that you find that time to recharge as well, because I think we're so busy with our schedule and all of our responsibilities, right, that we sort of get lost into it. So be mindful of things that do recharge you, and do them, especially with the upcoming weekend.
Yeah, well, as a parent, if we did think that talking to somebody might be helpful for our kid, how much can you push your kid? I mean, ultimately, it's going to be the parent's decision. I mean, the parent's going to say, "Let's do that." But I mean, if the kid really, really, really doesn't want to go, I mean, how much should you weigh it? Should you listen to the kid about that?
I would say, well, at least get them in the door first, right? Get them to see, because they might have different expectations from what it is, and that's what I typically see in the office. Is like, oh, I really don't want to be here, but then they see how easy it is, right, and how non-threatening it is, and that we don't force medications, and then they do change their minds a lot of times. So I would say try to get them in the door to be evaluated first, and if they feel like that's not something they're interested in, then we can think of other avenues, like getting the school involved, or getting their counselors involved as well. So yeah.
Willowbrooke website, does it offer up some good advice or some reference points? So they can, is that willowbrooke.com, or is it tanner.org? Or
Willowbrooke Psychiatric Center.org.
.org, very good. All right, Doc, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And glad you got to meet the community this morning. Glad I got to meet you. And thank you for tuning in to this morning's WLBB Community Voice. Next Friday, is the first day of October. We're going to start getting into the political season and bring in all these candidates that are challenged here locally for city council seats. I think we have about 5 or 6 already scheduled coming up in the month of October. So we'll keep you posted on those dates in which to tune in for your local race. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System and Oak Mountain Academy here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Have a great weekend, everybody.